And he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel, and said unto them, Why are ye come out to set your battle in array? Am I not a Philistine, and ye servants of Saul? Should choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. If he be able to fight with me and to kill me, then will we be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then ye shall be our servants, and serve us. And the Philistine said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Goliath came down to this field of battle, and he taunted the armies of Israel. He challenged them. He terrified them. Now, Goliath didn't do this one time. Goliath did this twice a day for 40 days. For 40 days. Now, I'm skipping the verses between 12 and 26. This is the backstory. This tells how David found himself on this battlefield and the condition he found the armies of Israel in when he arrived there. See, David was the youngest son of Jesse. Jesse had 8 sons total. The 3 oldest of these sons were already on the battlefield. They were following Saul in battle. They were there to do battle. They were some of the ones who were greatly afraid. Okay? Now, David's father sent him to take food to the army and to get word on how the battle went, how his brothers were doing. Now, why would Jesse send his boy to this battlefield? I'm just speculating here that perhaps Jesse felt that if he sent the boy, the youngest, he wouldn't get recruited into the army. He would be safe. If he sent any of the older boys, perhaps they would get recruited in. Or perhaps the Philistines, if the war was going badly, perhaps the Philistines would spare the boy so that he wouldn't be slain. He would come home. Either way, David found himself on the scene here, and he found the army of Israel, this mighty fighting force, fearful of one man, of one giant. Now Saul wanted it so bad, he wanted to send a man down there to fight. Nobody would volunteer. He offered them riches, he offered them position, he offered them his own daughter to marry if they would go down here and fight Goliath. Of course, they would have to defeat Goliath because it was a fight to the death. Now, on verse 26, and David spake to the men that stood by, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? Now, let's just be real. David was a man. He was a young man. David had an eye for the ladies. Okay? David was a sheep herder. He stunk. He hung out with sheep all day. Ladies don't look at you when you're a sheep herder. This was a chance for him to have riches, to have position, and to get a princess bride. Now, that's the natural aspect. On the spiritual aspect, I feel the Lord moved on him. And what he was trying to do here was he was trying to provoke the army of Israel. He was trying to encourage them. He was trying to give them a pep talk, if you will. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that defies us? That was his intent. It didn't quite work that way. Verses 27 through 37. What takes place here is David's words get back to his eldest brother, and they got back to the king. Now, David's brother was mad at him. Why was he mad at him? Because he made him and all the men of war ashamed of themselves, ashamed of their fear of one man. Here this boy comes, and he's braver than these men of war. Now, the king called for David, brought him into him. David did not change his story. He did not back down his offer. He still offered, I'll go. In fact, he went into great detail to convince the king he was the right man for the job. He talked about how he rescued the one lamb from the lion and the bear, barehanded. And Saul eventually said, okay, you can go. He sent him out there. And Saul armed David with his armor. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put a helmet of brass upon his head. Also he armed him with a coat of mail. And David girded his sword about his armor. And he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off him. Let's talk about this king's armor. This is not just any armor. This is the king's armor. This is the best armor on the battlefield. There is no armor better in the whole land than the king's armor. This is the strongest armor out there. Why would David take this strong armor off of him? Well, Saul was a very tall man. David was a very short man. He's a short boy. It didn't fit. It was too big. It didn't fit, number one. Number two, David had never used armor in his life. He was a shepherd. He was a boy. He was not a man of war. He had no idea how to use this armor. Thirdly, he had no faith in that king's armor. He placed his faith in himself and his own abilities, but more so in God, the one who sent him. Now, just like David, his king offered him his armor. Our king offers us his armor as well. Now, the difference between these two armors is our king's armor is a perfect fit. There is no doubt about it. Over in Ephesians it says, wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day. And having done all to stand, stand therefore, having your loins girt about with the truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked, and take the helmet of salvation, and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, and watching thereunto with all perseverance and supplication for all saints. Let's talk about this armor for just a minute. It says, your loins are girt about with the truth. We take this truth, the truth that we're seeking here today, this truth that we seek every time we open this book, and we wrap it around ourselves. And that keeps everything covered that needs to be covered. And it keeps everything exposed that needs to be exposed. The breastplate of righteousness. Why do we need a breastplate of righteousness? Well, when we were unsaved, we had a stony heart. It was impenetrable. It could not be harmed. When we became saved, when we gave our lives to Jesus, He gave us a heart transplant. He replaced that stony heart with a fleshy heart, a heart that was pliable, a heart that could be penetrated by the Word of God. This penetrable heart needs protection. So we put on the breastplate of righteousness, not our righteousness, but God's righteousness. Feet shod in the preparation of the gospel of peace. Why do we need this? Because we're not expected to stay right here in our little group and edify each other and worship right here. We're expected to go out into that world of sin and reach out to people. In order to do that, we can't go walking out there amongst the thorns and the thistles if we're not wearing our shoes. We have to shaw ourselves to go out there to reach the people. Shield of faith to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. Just because you came into Christianity, just because you became born again, just because you became saved, doesn't mean that your life is going to be easy, that you're not going to be attacked. You're going to get attacks from all sides. This shield of faith is on a swiveled. It turns in all directions. It needs to turn in all directions because those fiery darts don't just come from the enemy who's standing in front of you. They sometimes come from the side. They sometimes come from your loved ones. They sometimes come from the saints. The helmet of salvation. The helmet protects the head. What's inside your head? Your brain. This is where Satan attacks first, most, and always. He always comes after your brain. You have to protect your brain. This helmet of salvation. Now, all these things we've mentioned, they've all been defensive weapons, defensive tools. The sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. This is a defensive and offensive weapon. This is how we get back. This is how when the devil attacks us, we are able to defend ourselves and strike back. We strike back with the Word of God. When Jesus was tempted by Satan, he did not use his words. He used the Word of God. And that's what we need to do as well.